All right, let's start our examination of the Customize tab in DxO Photolab with a general overview of what we're looking at here. And it's really, if you've had any experience with image manipulation software at all, this is all looking pretty familiar to you. It's very intuitive, very easy to understand, but there are some intricacies that'll help you accelerate your workflow quite a bit. So as we look at things, on the left, I consider this area to be your informational area. In other words, here's the histogram, which you cannot move from here to here by simply dragging. We'll get into that in just a minute. This is your metadata, which I use all the time, and I usually center most of my attention on ISO, aperture, shutter speed, and to a much lesser degree, exposure, and then, of course, my focal length. I always want to make sure I'm shooting in RAW, which I am. I'm shooting in manual mode, and this tells me that the flash did not fire and that this is the center weighted average on my focus. You can add the author, the copyright, and also get into keywords. Now, I'm not a keyword user. Adding keywords in DxO Photolab 4 is a very straightforward process. It barely needs any instruction whatsoever. You click on this area, add the keyword, and you're off and running. It's that simple. Let's close this. The move zoom pattern, if we come up to here and go to 100% magnification, you'll notice a dotted box. And as we move this around, it obviously changes the view in the workspace so that you can see different areas of your image. And of course, this image is definitely in focus. It also gives you the ability to zero in on noise, if any. And of course, this is a 100 ISO image from a Pentax 645Z, so we have no noise. This also gives the information on the lens that was used, the date it was taken, and the size of the file and the resolution. So there's all kinds of information in this metadata that comes up. It obviously changes every time you change your selection in the thumbnail section. These areas up here adjust accordingly. Now, the history states work exactly the way they do in Photoshop, if you're at all familiar with that. If you're not familiar with the history states, what happens is that this area here records all of the adjustment steps that you execute on the image. Those are recorded here, and then you can advance and back up to start in different processes. Very, very simple and straightforward. The preset editor is also very straightforward. If you have any experience with presets, it's all very, very simple to understand. Presets are also available in the upper right-hand corner, and you'll see here that I have a gazillion presets that I've used over the years, and those are all contained right here. We'll get into presets in more detail later. On the right side of the workspace, we have all of the tools you're going to use to adjust your image. And we'll get into details about how each one of these work and about how to rearrange these palettes, how to establish new palettes, how to establish new workspaces, and so on. But everything you do to the image is located on the right side. You can search for corrections, and these are what I like to call the brightness controls. This is color. And of course, this is detail with sharpness and noise reduction and chromatic aberration correction and so on. And of course, this is changing the geometry on an image. If you want to manually adjust the pincushion and barrel distortion, you can do that here, although I would much prefer to let the module do it. And this, of course, are local adjustments. These are your presets. And this is a very, very cool thing right here. And we'll get into that later on. Now down here, obviously, are your thumbnails. We can make this smaller if you want to, or we can bring it up to its maximum area right there. Now, as you'll recall, if we went into the Photo Library tab, we can bring this all the way up and see a tiled view of the thumbnails, but you can't do that in the Customize tab. Over here is your export dialog, where you get to all the settings on how to set up your export or your conversion. We'll get into that into detail. And there's also incorporation of the Nik collection of plugins. And that's a really, really great thing. I mean, this is really totally cool, where you can do adjustments with Analog Effects Pro, Color Effects Pro, Define, HDR, and so on and so on. If you're familiar with the Nik collection of plugins, they're all located right here, and they work within DxO Photolab. Now over here is a kind of a shortcut export dialog box. You can automatically export this image to whatever application you want or directly in the Lightroom, prepare it for mail and so on. We went over this section when we looked at the photo library tab, but it's also available to you in the Customize tab. So everything in here is really easy to understand. At the very top, we have, I guess, our toolbar. And I'll go into all of this in detail, but we have our crop tool, we have our color picker, white balance, we have our level, horizon leveling tool, we have our perspective correction, we have a refined perspective correction tool, which I never use, and this right here, the repair tool, is much, much improved in Photolab 4. I never really used it before this version, but wow, they've really come to a quantum leap improvement on this repair tool. I never used the red eye tool. And then, of course, here are your local adjustments. So we'll get into everything in here in detail in the following movies with DxO Photolab.